When a man pulls away, your first instinct is to chase him, to fix it, to make him see what he's losing. But let me tell you something powerful. Silence speaks louder than words. When you stop chasing, you shift the energy. You stop saying, I need you, and start saying, I choose me. And that's when everything changes, because ignoring a man isn't about games, it's about growth. When you ignore a man who pulled away, the first thing that happens isn't about him, it's about silence. And silence, my friend, is powerful. It's not empty, it's not cold, it's a mirror. When you stop texting, stop calling, stop trying to figure out what went wrong, something shifts in the air. That constant energy you were sending his way suddenly stops. And that's when he starts to feel it. That's when your absence starts to echo louder than your presence ever did. You see, when someone pulls away, they often think you'll still be there, waiting. They expect your messages, your concern, your chase. They expect the same energy even after giving you less. But when you stop doing all that, when you just go quiet, it interrupts the pattern. He starts wondering, what happened? Why isn't she reaching out? Did she stop caring? That silence gets under his skin in a way your words never could. And here's the truth. Silence is uncomfortable. For him, it creates space. But for you, it creates growth. Because now, instead of using your energy to fix something that may not be ready to be fixed, you're learning to sit with yourself. You're learning not to respond from fear, but from strength. And that's where your power lies, in your ability to pause. The space that silence creates does something deeper. It forces reflection. Maybe for the first time, he starts thinking about how he showed up, about how he treated you, about the last thing he said. It's no longer just about his need for distance. It's about the emptiness that distance created. And the more time that passes, the more he feels the weight of your absence. Not because you punished him, but because you stopped giving what he once took for granted. Think about it. When we constantly explain, chase, or try to prove our worth, we drown out the other person's ability to see it. But when we step back, we give them the quiet they need to actually feel it. That's when realization hits. It's not your words that change him, it's the loss of your energy. It's the sound of no text notifications. The space between his thoughts where you used to be. And while he's sitting there wondering why the silence feels so heavy, you're slowly realizing something too. You were never supposed to carry both sides of the connection. You were never meant to be the only one holding it together. When you stop reaching out, you start reaching inward. That's when clarity comes. You see what you were giving, how much effort you were making, and what it cost you emotionally. And suddenly, you start valuing your peace more than his attention. Ignoring a man who pulled away isn't about pretending you don't care. It's about understanding that caring doesn't mean chasing. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to stop explaining your worth to someone who's not listening. Your silence is your statement. It says, I choose myself. I respect my peace. I trust that what's meant for me won't need to be chased. And here's what's ironic. When you finally pull back, that's when he truly sees you. Not because you forced him to, but because the silence gave him no choice but to notice. It's in that quiet space where reflection begins, for him and for you. He starts questioning what he lost, and you start realizing what you deserve. That's what happens when you stop chasing someone who pulled away. The silence you feared becomes the strength you needed. When a man pulls away, something inside you wants to fix it. You feel that tug to reach out, to ask what's wrong, to remind him of what you share. But every time you do, the balance tips a little further in his favor. You start moving toward him while he keeps stepping back. And before you realize it, you're the one doing all the emotional heavy lifting. When you stop chasing, when you choose to pause instead of pursue, you shift that balance. You remind him that connection isn't about one person doing all the reaching. It's about both people meeting in the middle. Ignoring him isn't about playing games. It's not about manipulation or trying to make him miss you. It's about restoring a sense of equity in the relationship. Because every time you chase someone who's walking away, you're silently saying, your distance controls me. But when you step back, when you stay still instead of reacting, your silence says, I control me. That's where the shift happens. He starts to notice the difference. The attention he once received without effort suddenly disappears. The emotional energy that used to revolve around him, checking in, comforting, wondering, stops. And that silence forces him to realize that your energy was never a guarantee, it was a gift. He begins to feel the change in power, not because you took it from him, but because you stopped handing it away so easily. And something deeper starts to happen inside you too. You begin to feel grounded again. The anxiety that came from wondering where you stand starts to fade because you're no longer waiting for his response to define your peace. You start realizing that the person who controls the pace of your emotions should never be someone else. It should be you. And when you reclaim that, you feel your confidence return. The truth is, chasing a man who's pulling away rarely brings him closer. It often makes him run faster because energy feels desperate when it's not reciprocated. But when you stop, when you breathe, when you choose stillness instead of reaction, it unsettles him. He's used to being the one with control, the one who sets the rhythm of communication. But now, you're the one setting the tone. Your silence tells him, I don't need to prove my worth to be seen. I'm already enough. That's the real power shift, when you stop trying to earn what should come naturally. Because in every relationship, there's a point where giving more doesn't heal, it hurts. And the only way to restore balance is to step back. It's in that step back that you stop trying to convince him and start convincing yourself that you're worthy of reciprocity. You stop running after attention and start walking toward self-respect. And here's the thing, when you pull your energy away, it doesn't create distance, it creates perspective. He finally sees what he's losing, but more importantly, you finally see what you were giving. You realize how much of yourself you were investing into uncertainty. You start understanding that real connection can't exist without equal effort. When the power shifts, it's not loud. It doesn't happen with a dramatic exit or a big speech. It happens quietly in your decision not to respond. It happens when you don't double text, when you don't beg for clarity, when you choose peace over panic. That moment of silence says more than any argument ever could. It says, I know my value, and I won't trade it for temporary validation. That's what it means to shift the power dynamic. It's not about controlling him, it's about freeing yourself. You stop chasing people who run and start attracting people who stay. You stop fighting for balance and start being the balance. And when that happens, the whole relationship changes because he can finally feel the difference between someone who needs him and someone who knows her own worth. When you ignore a man who's pulled away, you begin to see something most people miss. You start to see what's real. Because here's the truth, when you stop trying to keep someone close, their true intentions come to the surface. It's easy for someone to act interested when you're always available, when you're always giving, always reaching. But when you step back, when you take your attention and energy with you, that's when you see who's actually invested and who was just enjoying the comfort of your effort. See, ignoring him isn't punishment, it's clarity. It's a filter that reveals whether his connection with you was built on genuine care or convenience. When a man truly values you, your silence won't go unnoticed. He'll feel that space, and he'll want to close it. He'll reach out, he'll ask questions, he'll make an effort to rebuild the bridge. But when someone's interest was only shallow, when they were more attached to the attention than to you, that silence becomes permission. They'll drift further away, and that's your answer. And it hurts sometimes because you want to believe that he'll come running back. You want to believe that maybe he just needed time, that maybe he'll realize what he's losing. But the truth is, ignoring him doesn't always bring him back. It brings you peace. It brings you truth. It gives you the space to see that real love doesn't disappear when things get quiet. It stays. It shows up. It doesn't need to be chased. When you stop reaching out, you give him a chance to show his intentions through his actions, not his excuses. You're no longer feeding the connection. You're watching what he does with the silence. Does he notice? Does he try to reconnect? Does he show accountability for pulling away? Or does he stay gone, pretending like you never mattered? Whatever the answer is, it tells you everything you need to know. And that's the beauty of not chasing. It gives people the space to reveal themselves. Sometimes that revelation is painful, but it's also freeing. You stop guessing, stop analyzing mixed signals, stop trying to interpret words that never lead anywhere. Instead, you observe. You let actions do the talking. Because a man who truly cares won't be comfortable in your silence for long. He won't let pride or ego stop him from reaching out. But the one who was just passing time, he'll fade quietly, and that's your sign that you were never the priority you thought you were. It's also a test for yourself. When you ignore someone, you learn how much of your peace you used to give away just trying to keep them close. You learn to sit with the discomfort of not knowing and realize that uncertainty doesn't have to control you. You start to see that the person who truly deserves you won't make you question whether they care. They'll show up consistently even when it's inconvenient. So instead of asking, will he come back if I ignore him? Ask, what will his silence reveal about his intentions? Because the answer to that question tells you more about the relationship than any conversation ever could. A man who loves you will feel your absence and move toward you. A man who doesn't will use the distance as his exit. Either way, you get the truth. And that truth is powerful. It gives you closure without confrontation. It frees you from wondering. It replaces your hope with honesty. You no longer have to chase answers. You let silence deliver them. That's what happens when you stop chasing and start observing. His reaction, or his lack of one, tells you exactly where his heart really stands. When a man pulls away, the first thing that often takes a hit isn't your confidence. It's your energy. You start replaying every conversation, every moment, wondering what went wrong. Your mind becomes loud, your emotions restless, and you find yourself trying to fix something that isn't even in your control. That's what chasing does. It drains you. It takes every ounce of peace you have and trades it for uncertainty. But when you decide to stop, when you choose to ignore him, instead of overanalyzing every detail, you take that power back. You protect your emotional energy. Ignoring him isn't about pretending you don't care. It's about conserving what matters most, your peace. Every text you don't send, every what's wrong you hold back becomes an act of self-respect. You start to understand that emotional energy is just like physical energy. It's limited. You can either pour it into anxiety or you can pour it into healing. And the moment you stop chasing, that energy starts coming home to you. When you protect your emotional space, you start seeing things clearly again. You stop reacting to every little shift in his tone or every delayed response. You stop making his distance a reflection of your worth. You start realizing that his withdrawal says more about his state than about your value. That's what happens when you stop chasing. You move from reacting to reflecting. You begin to breathe again. And it's in that stillness that you start noticing something powerful. Peace feels better than panic. The silence that once scared you becomes the silence that heals you. You begin to see how much of your identity you were giving away trying to hold on to someone who wasn't giving you the same energy back. You start recognizing how exhausting it was to constantly overextend, to keep proving yourself, to keep worrying if you were enough. And the more you detach from that, the more whole you start to feel. Protecting your emotional energy doesn't mean you stop loving. It means you start loving smarter. You begin to set invisible boundaries that say, my peace matters too. You realize that caring deeply doesn't have to mean chasing endlessly. You can still want someone without losing yourself in the process. Because the truth is, the version of you that's calm, centered, and grounded, that's the version he'll remember. That's the energy that lingers long after your messages stop. When you pull back and focus inward, the energy you were spending on him starts working for you. You start sleeping better, thinking clearer, smiling more. You remember the things you loved doing, the goals you had, the peace you once protected. It's not about pretending he doesn't matter. It's about remembering that you do. And the more you protect that peace, the more confident you become in your ability to let go of what doesn't serve you. The truth is, chasing someone who's pulling away doesn't bring them closer, it only pushes your peace further away. But ignoring him, choosing stillness instead of reaction, changes everything. It sends a quiet but strong message: I can love you, but I won't lose myself trying to keep you. That kind of calm confidence isn't cold. It's powerful. It's the kind of strength that draws real respect. Because when your peace is protected, your presence becomes magnetic. You no longer need to chase attention. It starts finding you. You become centered, composed, and secure in yourself. And from that place, whether he comes back or not doesn't define your worth anymore. You're no longer waiting for someone else to bring you calm. You've already found it within yourself. That's what happens when you stop chasing and start protecting your energy. You stop losing yourself trying to keep someone else. When you ignore a man who's pulled away, something unexpected happens. You become a mystery again. And I don't mean playing hard to get or pretending to be someone you're not. I mean, you stop being predictable. You stop being the person who always reaches out first, always explains, always tries to make things feel okay. The moment you pull your energy back, you shift from being an open book to a story he suddenly wants to reread. Because people respect what they can't easily figure out, and when you stop giving him constant access to your thoughts, emotions, and time, he starts realizing how much he took that access for granted. When you stop talking, he starts wondering. When you stop showing up, he starts noticing. The mystery you create isn't about manipulation. It's about boundaries. You're not withholding to punish, you're holding back to protect your peace. And that space, that uncertainty, makes him think. He starts asking questions he never asked before. What's she thinking? Is she moving on? Did she stop caring? Those questions stir something inside him that constant reassurance never could. Because here's what happens when you always explain yourself. Your words lose their value. When you constantly try to make someone understand your feelings, they stop listening. But when you go quiet, your absence becomes the loudest thing in the room. The silence carries weight. It speaks in ways your explanations never could. It says, I'm not chasing anymore. I'm not begging to be seen. I'm giving you the space you said you needed, and taking mine too. And that's where respect begins to grow. When you stop giving over talking, over trying, you start showing that you're not desperate for validation. You're grounded. You're calm. You're secure enough to be silent. And silence, when it comes from confidence, is magnetic. It draws people in. It makes them wonder how you can stay so composed when they expected you to fall apart. That calmness, your ability to hold yourself together, is what changes everything. You see, mystery isn't about playing games, it's about self-control. It's about realizing that you don't owe explanations to someone who stopped showing up. You don't have to fill the silence just because they created it. Sometimes, not saying anything is how you get your message across the clearest. Because when you stop explaining, you force the other person to reflect. You give them time to feel the weight of their own choices. And in that space, curiosity turns into reflection, and reflection can turn into respect. What often surprises people is that mystery doesn't distance you. It deepens your impact. It makes him realize that your presence isn't guaranteed. It makes him think twice about how he treated you. And for you, it brings a different kind of peace. The peace that comes from no longer needing to prove your worth. Because when you're confident enough to be silent, you send a clear message. I'm not afraid of being misunderstood. I'm just done over explaining my value. And that's where attraction begins to rebuild. not from desperation, but from dignity. Men are naturally drawn to women who have boundaries, who can walk away with grace, who don't chase validation, but attract it by simply being centered. That's the kind of mystery that leaves an impression long after the silence. It's not about making him miss you, it's about showing him that you're whole even without him. So when you ignore him, when you choose calm over chaos, you're not creating distance, you're creating depth. You're teaching him that your presence has weight, that your energy isn't free, and that your silence carries meaning. And in that stillness, he starts to respect what he once took for granted. That's what happens when you stop explaining yourself. Your silence becomes the statement that earns his respect. When you ignore a man who's pulled away, something begins to shift, not just in him, but in you. That's the part most people don't see at first. They think ignoring is just a tactic to make him notice, to make him chase, but it's much more than that. Ignoring him reconnects you with yourself. It gives you the chance to step out of the whirlwind of his actions, his distance, his unpredictability, and finally see yourself clearly. Because so often, when someone pulls away, we lose sight of who we are in the attempt to hold on. We bend, we compromise, we overthink, and slowly, piece by piece, we forget our own worth. The moment you decide to step back, you start remembering. You remember your own boundaries, your own needs, your own value. You stop measuring yourself by his attention or his presence. And that's liberating. That freedom, the kind that comes when you are no longer reacting to someone else's inconsistencies, allows you to rebuild your emotional foundation. You start to focus on what really matters: your growth, your happiness, your peace. You see how much time, energy, and love you were pouring into someone who wasn't reciprocating, and you realize that you were neglecting the most important relationship in your life, the one with yourself. Ignoring him gives you clarity. In the quiet, away from constant contact and constant questioning, you start noticing patterns you didn't see before. You start recognizing behaviors that you once excused. You start understanding the difference between temporary affection and genuine care. That insight is priceless because it allows you to make decisions from a place of awareness rather than fear. You're no longer driven by the need to fix him or save the connection. You're driven by the need to protect and honor yourself. And while he might be wondering why you're quiet, you're discovering something much more valuable: your independence. You're learning that you don't need someone else's approval or attention to feel whole. You're learning that your worth isn't defined by how much he notices you, and your happiness isn't determined by how much he invests in you. That realization shifts everything, because the more you reconnect with yourself, the less dependent you become on someone else's presence for validation. You begin to stand taller, think clearer, and live freer. There's a certain power in this self-reconnection that cannot be underestimated. When you stop chasing, you're able to see what you truly want, what aligns with your values, and what deserves your time. You start prioritizing your goals, your passions, and your peace over uncertainty and emotional roller coasters. You start building a life that is not defined by his choices but by your own. And in that, you gain a confidence that no chase could ever give you. The irony is, while you reconnect with yourself, he begins to notice too, but not in the way he expected. He notices your calm, your focus, your joy that doesn't hinge on him. He begins to see that your world doesn't stop when he pulls away, and that's far more magnetic than anything you could have said or done while chasing him. It's the embodiment of self-respect and self-love, something that cannot be faked, something that cannot be ignored. Reconnecting with yourself also allows you to let go of fear and anxiety. You stop overanalyzing messages, you stop questioning his motives, and you stop compromising your peace for his presence. You start to understand that what is meant for you will come without desperation, and what isn't will leave without drama. That awareness brings clarity and emotional freedom unlike anything else. So when you ignore him, it's not about punishment, it's about realignment. It's about choosing yourself over uncertainty, clarity over chaos, and peace over obsession. It reconnects you with your own power, your own value, and your own life. And in that reconnection, you finally remember this truth: the distance you create for him is the space you need to find yourself again.